What's going on, guys? Switching up the coffee a little bit today, just because this is one of my favorite side drinks other than coffee to have on occasion. So we're gonna work on this while we chat here. As most of you know, Hurricane Irma just rolled through here in Florida. And I'll go ahead and tell you right now, this is going to be a kind of an after-action report. Probably going to be long. You'll probably want to go get something to drink. If you haven't figured that out by now and you're new to the channel, we don't do short mentally deficient videos here. We actually talk about things and engage in things, and to do that sometimes it takes a little while. So go get your favorite beverage, prop your feet up, and get comfortable. We may be here a minute. So, Irma rolled through. Irma was a major hurricane. In fact, when I was reading, it was the strongest hurricane recorded size and intensity wise on record. Now, if any of you have been watching the news and that sort of thing, you saw that she really wreaked havoc down in the lower Bahamas, the Virgin Islands, that whole string of islands that runs from the Caribbean up into, towards Cuba. As Irma made her turn, she basically came straight up the state of Florida. Now, originally, as it was starting to make the turn, they were forecasting that pretty much the eye, the center of the storm, was going to come right freaking up the middle of the state. Now, believe it or not, that would have actually been the ideal scenario if it was going to hit us. And I know that sounds crazy, but bear with me. What ended up happening is she shifted more to the west, which put the eye more on closer to the west coast of Florida instead of up the middle. So at first you're thinking, oh, okay, well, it shifted more to the west, blah, blah, blah. That's not a good thing. Typically, on a hurricane, even tropical storms for the most part, the strongest, most condensed area, most violent area of weather on one is the east northeast corner inside of a storm, because it's going counterclockwise. It's just compressing all that energy on that side and that corner. Well, by shifting to the west, it put more and the bulk of the strongest part of the storm right over the main largest part of the state. Additionally, by shifting more west, it let that westerly side sweep out over the Gulf and just feed like a buffet off of that warm Gulf water. So as those bands weaken coming across on the north, they regenerate as it goes across the Gulf, and then when it hits on the southern side, it's just all built back up again. So that whole eastern, northeastern side of the storm just stayed fed and energized. It also served to destabilize things. And it's going to sound crazy, but sometimes you want a hurricane to be nice and stable. Because if it's nice and stable, it's a little more predictable. And the bulk of your energy is going to be around the eye wall and within that, 50, 60, 70, 80 miles outwards from the eye. The more unstable it becomes, the more those outer edges start really producing a lot more than normal tornadoes and that sort of thing. And when you start getting, tornadoes just spawning off all over the place, coming over land like it did, that's what wreaks just crazy havoc, in addition to everything else in the storm. So you've got all the winds and the rain, and then you've got the tornadoes popping up everywhere. It's just chaotic. So it would have been better if she would have kept more centered on the state. Now, yes, right where the eye wall went up would have been possibly more catastrophic than what it was, but it would have weakened faster because there wouldn't have been so much of those westerly bands feeding over the the Gulf of Mexico. That all said, what ended up happening is some areas, I'm up in the northeast corner of the state, what ended up happening is the central and eastern side of the state actually got it quite a bit worse in some cases than the western part of the state that was closer to the eye, because we had just that constant feeding of bands, and it really wasn't even bands like in a lot of hurricanes. It was just steady rain and wind. So there were a couple of people that commented on some other videos that I saw who were down in the Tampa area and that sort of area. They were kind of on the western side of the eye as it come up, and they were making comments like, "Oh, y'all are just talking a bunch of trash. It wasn't no worse than some summer thunderstorms for us." Well, just because it was that way for you doesn't mean it was that way for the rest of the state. Okay, you were on the weaker side. Sorry, that's just the way it is. Now, all that said, I think the state overall fared really well. There are people who lost everything. Okay, let's keep that in mind. There are people who right now, this storm was catastrophic because it took away everything they had. But by and large, considering what it could have done and what a lot of folks were concerned about it doing, myself included, it could have been a lot worse. So while we got hit pretty good, I think we have to try to look for the positives where we can, in that we're thankful that it wasn't any worse like it very, very easily could have been. Now, touching on that, I see people in other parts of the country, remember we're talking about everybody down here and preparing for hurricanes, and then it doesn't end up being as bad as what it thought it would, and that sort of thing. Here's the thing about hurricanes. You don't prepare for what it did after it came through. Okay? So like if another hurricane comes to Florida, I will take notes from what we did for Irma, but I will prepare for the storm that's coming, not the one that went through. Now, what I mean by that is, okay, that one ended up not being as bad as it could have been. So the thought is, oh, well, the next one's not going to be as bad as what they're saying either, so I'm just going to slack off on what I'm doing. Wrong answer. You prepare for the individual storm and what it's potentially capable of, taking notes from past ones, but not relying on that as your primary overall barometer for what you're going to do. Because you don't know what the next storm's going to do. The next storm could be weaker than the previous one and do more damage. That sounds crazy, but that's just the way hurricanes are. Tropical storms even. You can have a tropical storm do more damage sometimes than a hurricane, depending on the individual storm. That's why you have to take each storm on its own merit and go from there. Speaking of being prepared, here's the thing, guys. If you stay prepared all the time, you don't have to be one of the folks running crazy 3, 4, 5, 6 days before a storm gets here, fighting all the other people running crazy, scarfing up supplies and scrapping over, bare shelves. It's part of being prepared. That's why I never get the whole mantra that I've heard people say, oh, you're one of those preparedness guys, survivalists, preppers, whatever. Why are you so paranoid? I'm not paranoid. I'm ready for all kind of stuff. What do I have to be paranoid about? Those are the people then that end up being paranoid and panicky because all of a sudden they realize, the monster's knocking at the door and they ain't got nothing to be able to handle it with. You'd think that at some point people would get a clue. It's not like these things don't happen on regular occasion. And it could be something as simple as a thunderstorm knocking out power. It happens every day, virtually, I guess. Winter storms coming in. Those happen every year in the country and people lose power and all. All those little things, it's not just about, from a survivalist standpoint, prepper standpoint, whatever term you want to use. I got to come up with a new one because those are all outplayed. Got to put that on my to-do list. I'm going to come up with my own little acronym or term there. Stay tuned for that. But it's not just about preparing to fight off the almighty imperial federal government. Like I told you guys before, that should be way down at the bottom of your list of concerns. It's not always about worrying about the goblins and the orcs and the zombies, although those are pretty high on the list. Because in natural disasters, they tend to come out, even short-term ones. A lot of being prepared for things covers a wide variety of bases. So you don't have to worry. We stay prepared. So when Irma showed up, we made some trips out to get some things, but we were getting things that most everybody else wasn't because we had all the priorities. We were just kind of grabbing some, you know what, this would be nice to have. This would be nice to have. Maybe we'll get one or two extra of these just in case if they got them. If not, no worries. We got plenty. Maybe we'll grab an extra pack of batteries. If the shelf's empty, we got plenty of them. No worries. Back to the zombies and the goblins and the orcs. Those will come out in natural disasters. It's given. To what level or extent is always the unknown and the question. I've seen them firsthand in large numbers. People will do that. We saw in Irma. There were reports coming in on the news, privately, all kind of different sources, where lootings and stuff were happening before the storm got here. Now that's a fairly new phenomenon. I mean, it's happened, occasionally, but usually that's what happens after the storm's cleared out. This time it started happening beforehand. I think part of that is due to our broader news coverage now, social media coverage, that sort of thing. They knew exactly where areas were empty and void of people. They knew exactly where to go to do their thing. Now, fortunately, it was kept to a minimum for the most part. And there was some afterwards, but again, was kept to a minimum, thankfully. But the potential is always there. So, you've got to take the whole gamut. You've got to look at the whole aspect of food, water, shelter, self-defense. You think, oh, a hurricane's coming. I got to have gas for the generator. I got to have batteries. I got to have food and water, and yada yada yada. Make sure you've got your self-defense items squared away, whatever that may be. Handgun, shotgun, rifle, whatever. You very well may need it. It may be just as important as all the other stuff, because if somebody wants to come in and take all your stuff at gunpoint, that leaves you with nothing. Believe it or not, that is a life-threatening situation, okay? Treat it accordingly. So, that all said, I want to stop here and say a special thank you to John over at the Prepared Mind channel. John was sharing some short video clips that I was trying to send him from my cell phone as things were coming in. Our goal was for me to try to get him as much as I could on the storm from our area, but I didn't have a whole lot to get and send him before it got here, and by the time it got here and got really bad and was kind of getting into the meat of it, my phone's not waterproof, and there wasn't any way that I could actually get out in it and get any kind of video or anything done to send. Then we lost power. Obviously I had no internet, and inside of our house I don't get enough of a cell phone signal without the internet to be able to send anything out. So it ended up that I was only able to send him a few things, and I didn't get near as much to him as I wanted to. It's just the nature of the beast. I do appreciate him sharing and hosting what he did for me. All you guys that are new here to my channel, that are a subscriber of his, welcome aboard. I'm glad to have you guys here. Hope you like what you see and feel like pulling up a chair and sticking around. So yeah, I apologize to y'all and to him for not being able to get you more. I couldn't get my main camera out in the storm, obviously, because while it was coming through, A, it was mostly at night and you couldn't see much with the camera anyway, and B, it was pretty much 10 plus hours, more like 12 hours of just non-stop rain, because we had a northeaster hitting us about 8 hours before the actual storm got here, and it was raining and windy from that. Then the storm got in. It was just a continuous, it was a continuous wall of water. So I couldn't get my good camera out there and get it wet even in the daylight hours where you could see. So I'm sorry guys, I wanted to get y'all more, but there was all that, and then honestly I was somewhat too busy trying to keep an eye on things and contend with things as it was coming through, because we were getting a lot of tornadoes in the area. We did have a couple come by real close here. Some of my woods out back, there's a big swath of trees that are about halfway up, all missing and twisted and dumped. So I was busy listening for those and trying to corral everybody when need be, for safety reasons. So is what it is. Sorry about that. I wish I could have got more. So now that you've rambled on and all that, if you're still with me and you haven't left yet, let's get into the bulk of some of the items that I use. And I wrote it down because I'm getting CRS disease as I get older. So you see me talk about on my channel clothing, all different kinds of clothing ideas, camo patterns, solid colors, whatever. There's a reason that I go into all that. This is a perfect example. My best friend and his family were staying with us through the storm because they live in an older house, and their area, the streets around them are pretty prone to flooding. Their house is fairly high and dry, but everything around them floods so bad that they couldn't get out afterwards, and nobody could get into them if they needed to. So we just felt like it was safer if they stayed here with us. He and I were kind of doing our thing during the storm as far as keeping an eye on everything, taking care of business. And we pretty much both used the same clothes. Why do I say all that? Well, here's why. In something like that, power goes out. You might have to go out in the middle of the storm and make emergency repairs. You're probably going to be wet. After the storm, hurricanes usually come in the summertime. When you're trying to clean up and everything, do repairs, you're going to be hot and sweaty. With no power, it's going to be easy to have getting too hot and overheating being an issue, or, believe it or not, the reverse can be an issue. If you get too wet and stay wet, it can't dry off. you can get hypothermia, even in the summertime. So, what we ended up using, I've done a video on them. Two things. These TruSpec dry release t-shirts and the TruSpec basic BDU pants. The basic BDU pants are real similar material to TruSpec's 24/7 pants. I like the BDU pants because they're loose and baggy and are easy to work in. With the cargo pockets, it's easy to put things in that I might need, be it tools for doing repairs, flashlights, whatever. I got a place to put things. Both of these items, as I've said before in other videos, worked perfectly. Okay, thank you TruSpec for the good stuff, because both of those items are easily affordable on a budget. They're not expensive and they work. We got soaking wet. Very quickly, the shirts dried out just from body heat. The pants dried out just from body heat. We didn't have any problems in cleanup, even moving big tree limbs and stuff and it rubbing up against you and all. No rips, tears, snags, anything like that. They worked as advertised. Big fan of those. I've been slowly stocking up on them. I'm going to continue to stock up on them. Highly recommend them. Not only for something like this, but just for your general preparedness use. Regardless of the disaster or the situation, end of the world collapse, whatever, you're going to have good clothes. You want things that are going to dry out easily, that are going to last, going to work, etc. There you go. Two prime items that work. I didn't address this already, so let me go back and address this. As far as damage, we were okay here. We got a good solid house. We had a lot of trees down, a lot of limbs down. We were obviously without power and internet. Fortunately, we got it up, got everything back up and running, I think late Wednesday night, which was even quicker than what I had honestly expected, and a lot quicker than some of my friends that were still out all the way up until Friday. There's some areas in the state that are still out, so kudos to that. The only damage we had, that the house was okay. We did have a big tree limb that decided to do target practice with my wife's car and nailed it on the roof pretty good. But we've already gotten with insurance and we're going to be getting that squared away, so all's good there. Hate that the car got whacked, but considering the damage that was done, how much worse it could have been, we'll take it. Before I get into some more of the items, let me finish this too. Flooding was a huge issue from this storm here locally and in other areas of the state, just because of the sheer amount of water that it put on the ground. We still have flooding issues locally because the water's still running off, filling up the creeks and rivers and stuff, and they're just coming out of the banks everywhere. So that's still an ongoing problem that people are having to deal with even right now, a week later. So, getting back to items. I used my Danner Tannicus boots, the waterproof ones, and my covert thread socks. I got videos up on all those. The boots, unlike last year in Matthew when I forgot and put on the vented ones that I've got and not the waterproof ones, this time I made sure it was the waterproof ones. They did great, with the exception of they ended up soaking through and getting wet inside. Now, I was out in the storm outside the front door pretty much all night long for the entirety of it, listening and keeping an eye out for things, because we didn't have any early warning. There was no TV or anything to put up an emergency alert if a tornado was coming our way. So we were, my father and I were outside basically using the old Mark I Motto ear to try to listen for stuff. So we got wet. we had 2 or 3 inches of standing water pretty much everywhere. Didn't come in the house, but it was standing everywhere. So what ended up happening was by morning time, the amount of water that the boots stayed in, I guess, just ended up overwhelming the membrane inside, and it did end up soaking through to the inside. Now, walking through puddles and creeks and things like that, they do great. But apparently if you submerge them in ankle deep water for an extended constant period, they will eventually soak through. Now, they didn't get like buckets of water inside where you could turn the boot up and pour it out, but it was wet in there. And before anybody says anything, it wasn't perspiration, it was actual water. What helped though were my covert thread socks. Once again, one of those items that worked as advertised, and that's why you hear me talk about them and why I like them and why I buy them. The covert thread socks did an amazing job of keeping the water pulled away from my feet, so that when I took my boots off, my feet were slightly damp to the touch, but everything wasn't all wrinkled up like you'd been soaking them in a tub of water for 8 hours. And my feet didn't get cold. I didn't get any blisters, nothing like that. Covert thread socks, 2 thumbs up. If I had more than 2 thumbs, I'd give them more than 2 thumbs up. They work, guys. They just straight up work. Can't go wrong with them. As far as the boots, I'm really back to a point I've made in other videos. I think it's almost better in warmer climates to just use a vented boot. It's gonna get wet inside. You might as well use a vented one that's gonna let whatever water does get in there drain out and let more airflow go in and out of the boot to dry it out faster and dry your socks out faster while you've got them on. That's probably going to end up being the way to go. You just have to accept that you're going to have wet feet. Now in colder climates, that might be something that you have to kind of rethink and really give some thought to. So can't speak for that for now. What else? I used my old, that I've had for years, my proper Adventure Tech rain suit. Worked 100%, stayed completely dry with it as long as I had it zipped up and on. No issues with it leaking at all. It was good to go. Again, it's great if you're standing still, but if you got to move around much in hot weather, you're almost better just getting wet and then drying out, because when you wear a full rain suit like that, or even a poncho, you're going to sweat in it, and our humidity and everything down here, you're going to get soaking wet anyway, only it's not going to be rainwater, it's going to be sweat. So just let the rainwater hit you, and at least it'll clean you off a little bit while you're getting soaked, and then you can dry out afterwards. Going back to having clothes that dry out really fast, see, there's a method to how all this stuff works. Overall preps, we were good with gas. We had plenty of gas for our generators. They ran flawlessly. We keep those primed and tuned up pretty much year round. Plenty of gas on hand. We didn't have to run out to the gas station and find gas. We were ready. I can go out now and refill the cans that we used. We're good to go, but not everybody's panicking for gas right now. Plenty of food. A note on the food. One of the things that we decided to go out and grab kind of at the last minute, we had plenty of staple stuff we could use without even digging into our long-term stuff. Including the stuff that my buddy and his family brought with them when they come over, which, by the way, was a good kind of bug out test for them of having to load up all their stuff and bring it over here. It went really well for them. I think my buddy's going to make a few tweaks in some things, but overall some really good test and experience there. So food wasn't an issue. We had plenty of food. Something to think about when my wife made a trip to the store. Hang on, let me wet the whistle again here. I'm rambling a lot. one of the things that I told her to look for was go see over on the cereal aisle, or whatever aisle it's in, if there's any Pop-Tarts or things like that left. Why? Well, we had 6 kids here, between me and my buddy. And not to mention the adults. Pop-Tarts are one of the things that I don't think a lot of people think about in an emergency like that, and even outside of it. Now, those aren't something that we eat on a regular basis. Just don't eat a lot of stuff like that. However, in this situation, it's something to go look for on the shelf. My theory was correct. While other shelves were empty, the Pop-Tart shelf was slap full. Pop-Tarts will store a long time. They don't require any cooking. You can open them out of the package and eat them right then and there. They're fairly calorie dense. So if you're needing, some good caloric intake, which you will in a long-term situation, even if it's a couple weeks without power, they're good for that. It's also a bit of a treat for the kids, which does a lot kind of for them psychologically and mentally, to get that little, sweet treat of a snack that they're not normally, at least ours, aren't normally used to getting. So it's little food sources like that that I think a lot of people don't think about and don't look for. So keep that in the back of your head next time you're looking for something. We had plenty of propane and gas for our grills, so we could cook for quite a long time with no problem, cooking on the grills themselves or just using the grills as a stove and putting pots on them. I've got a gas-powered camp stove that takes the different size propane bottles. It works great. You can put a full-size pot on it. It was great for in the middle of the night when we all couldn't sleep, decided to stop and take a break, and we wanted a cup of coffee. We could take the big percolator and just take the insides out, filled it up with water, put it on there, heated up a full pot of water, excuse me, and we could all have coffee and made some hot chocolate for the kids. And it's those little psychological things like that that go a long way. So that worked. Plenty of fuel for that. So all that, we had everything covered. I highly recommend having battery-operated lanterns in addition to candles and oil lamps. I think you need to have all of it, and here's why. As hot as it was for us, modern homes are not made and constructed to be lived in, at least in the South, without air conditioning. Now, 150 years ago, houses were made to be cool without air conditioning because they didn't have air conditioning, especially down here in the South. They were constructed in a manner that facilitated airflow and evacuated hot air out and yada, yada, yada. Nowadays they aren't. If you don't have air conditioning running down here in a modern house, you're going to get hot, especially in hot weather. The last thing you want to do, if you can help it, is to have something generating heat. Candles, oil lamps, all that kind of stuff. You wouldn't think it, but you light up 2 or 3 of those, they're going to put off a lot of heat in a house, in addition to just the body heat that you're giving off. So have those for backups and for even cold weather, but during hotter weather, battery operated lanterns are a godsend. They give out a ton of light, and with batteries you don't have to worry about any heat or anything like that. Flashlights. Everybody loves the latest and greatest tactical flashlight. I love my Surefires. I've got one that's my everyday carry. I've got Surefires on a couple of my firearms. They're great. There's a lot of other good brands of tactical lights. Here's the problem. Tactical lights aren't made to be turned on and left on. Most of them are meant to be used intermittently, momentary, or for very short duration. When you got to navigate around in the dark in an extended time period, you want something that's not going to burn through batteries like they do, and you want something that's not going to get hot like a lot of them are prone to. And quite honestly, for what we're doing, you don't want, nor do you require, 400 lumens of light to be able to do what you want to do. I found that while I had my Surefire in my pocket the whole time, the lights that I ended up using more than any other light that I've got, and this was the same in previous storms, and so did my kids. Years ago, we all got little combo packs of a mini mag light and a mag light solitaire. Okay? 2 AA's, 1 AAA. We ended up using these lights right here more than all of our other high-speed tactical lights combined. Now they have their place, okay? I'm not saying you shouldn't have them, but for doing general tasks, for moving around the house, moving around outside, these are the ones we use because you can turn them on and leave it on and see what you're doing. It doesn't get hot, and the batteries last infinitely longer than a tactical light. Not to mention, AA's and AAA's are a little bit easier to get than what a lot of tactical lights use via the CR123 batteries. So again, find you some little lights, and I'm not plugging Maglite per se. There's a lot of other similar brands that you can get, but just get some good. These are the LED versions. Highly recommend the LED versions because you ain't gonna worry about bulbs going out. But get you some AA, AAA LED flashlights, just simple ones. Again, this thing here is probably not, I don't even know, I'd have to look at the package, but I guess it's probably not 20 lumens maybe. But you know what, in the dark, once your eyes are dilated and it's pitch black, it's way more than enough light to see and do anything I need to do. I can light up an entire room with this light and see what I want to do, okay? So the idea of these, I'm not trying to blind anybody like in a defensive situation with them. I'm trying to see where I'm going, see what I'm doing, etc. Highly recommend those. Last but not least, like I said, looting is a concern. The less than honorable members of society tend to always look for moments of opportunity where they can do their thing. That's fine. You've got to be ready for that. You've got to be ready for that every day of your life, but especially in bad situations like that, be it a storm or down the road even worse, rioting, economic collapse, whatever. It happens, people. It's a proven historical fact. So you got to have things to protect yourself. A good handgun that you can have close by and handy all the time is a great thing. My buddy and I both had our AR pistols. We're mainly just in the house and right here on the property. This is something small and lightweight and fairly compact that we could keep close by and does the job. It doesn't have to be anything big and fancy. I don't have to have my big 16-inch carbine to be able to take care of things around the house and around the property if somebody decided they wanted to try and acquire something that wasn't theirs or otherwise threaten us. So we had our AR pistols close by and felt perfectly fine with them. These and a bandolier of a couple of mags, we were more than good to go. That's all we needed. So another use for small pistols like AR pistols, that sort of thing. The other thing that I kept close by, probably a little more than that even, was my CZ Scorpion pistol. I honestly ended up liking this for what we were doing almost better than the AR pistol, just because when I did want to carry it around with me, it was a little bit smaller, a little bit more compact, lighter weight. I like the 9mm on it for close quarter stuff. here in and around the house. And if I did had to shoot, the noise without hearing protection isn't going to be quite as bad. Another thing to think about, did a video on this before too, two-legged threats are not the only threats you have to worry about in a catastrophic situation. Economic collapse, end of the world, hurricane, whatever. Where we live at, lots of woods around, you have to worry about animals getting displaced. Like I said, we had a lot of water on the ground, and there's areas back in the back in the swamp and everywhere where I go to do stuff that was, you couldn't get into it. Snakes and other animals are going to seek high and dry ground. Well, here's a big giant high and dry cave for them to come to. It happens. You gotta keep all that into consideration when you're considering defensive tools. It's not just about defending yourself from two-legged critters. So a 9mm pistol, it could be a Scorpion, it could be a 9mm AR pistol that a lot of people have started getting. Those are all great choices just for a nice little compact weapon to have on hand to defend yourself. So this is probably pushing, geez, I don't even know how long now. And if you have stuck through all this way, you're an absolute trooper and a champ. I applaud your dedication and patience. I know this has went on long, guys, but I wanted to try to throw all that out there for you. I'll admit up front, everybody's situation is going to be different when it comes to things like storms and that sort of thing, what you've got to take into consideration. I could get into a lot more finer detail on everything, more so than I already have, but not everybody wants to hear all those. That would be more individualistic, for specific people that had questions. So I apologize if I didn't answer a question or something that you were mentally asking. Again, it could have been a lot worse. Thank God it wasn't. I am fully happy that it wasn't. Still praying for everybody that's still dealing with the effects of it right now, especially those that have lost everything from the storm that really got hit hard. We weathered it pretty well. We very easily could have been one of those people that did lose everything. Again, thank God we weren't. So, thank you again, John, over at Prepared Mind channel. I appreciate him hosting those videos for me, even though it was only a couple. I really wish I could have got more. I'm hoping that in the future I can collaborate with John on some more things, because he's on the opposite side of the country as me, and he's got that West Coast going, and I got the East Coast going. So with everything in between, I'm hoping maybe we can share some stuff in the future. I'm going to try to get with him about that. Other than that, I know you guys probably have questions. Put them in the comments. I'll do the best I can to get to them, guys. Just understand, having missed a whole bunch of days recently, the next couple of weeks are going to be just mad for me trying to get more caught back up on work and stuff. Not to mention I got some other big things that we were already in the middle of going on that we're trying to wrap up. That's going to end up taking a bunch of time. So just please be patient. I will try to get to your questions and comments as I can. So I'm going to stop now. I'm sure we've rambled on long enough. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, if you want to donate to the channel, donation links down below. If you don't, no worries. I ain't making a living off of this. You guys take care, stay safe, and hopefully I can get some more new stuff up for you here real soon. See you later, guys.